So, welcome back. Welcome to part 2 of Painting in Tandem, an experiment in teaching, and it is an experiment. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be starting on the flesh bits, the face. And to start out, I want to show you a picture. This is one of my favorite drawings of all time. I'll do an overlay in the video. But this is an idea of how you might think. This is a famous drawing by John Singer Sargent. And you're used to doing a lot of pencil drawings.
Yes.
So pay attention to how much of the pencil drawing you did in this, and then where the ink went. Like very, very selective. This is something like what we're going to be doing today.
Okay.
This also feels probably a bit familiar for you because of the way you normally work. You draw in pencil and you've then done oil or watercolor paintings over that.
Yes.
Right? We're kind of going to do the same thing, except we'll be using paint in place of pencil. What we're going to do is do what's called an underpainting. And in a monochrome, we'll just do the flesh bits. And then, not this next lesson, but the lesson after, we'll put a flesh color over it, right? So, we'll talk about the colors next. Okay, I think I got my head on straight now. We're going to be painting using 3 colors. There are 2 underpainting traditions. One is called grisaille, and that's just grayscale.
Oh, okay.
And so that'll be the most like your pencil drawing. The other, I think, is called terre verte, or that could just be the name of a color. But it's same idea, except it's you use viridian green in there, so you get a very vibrant blue-green underpainting. I do something slightly in between. I use black and white and yellow ochre, which makes kind of a dull olive green. And what that's going to do for me is when I put I glaze the flesh tones over top of that, red and green being complements, the greenish-ness of it makes it more vibrant, but it's not nearly as vibrant as viridian, and that's just a whole lot of saturation to color, or to cover. So I'm going to get you set up with that in a minute. Okay, one other thing I'm going to point out at the start. This looks different than it did when you were here last time. So I painted over the clear gesso to protect the pencil drawing from the paint. I also painted over the background area with a white acrylic paint. The reason I did that is because using the pencil grip, like I'm doing here, or we're doing here, if you want to add a light color background, the grid shows through it. Because some oil colors are fairly transparent, some are semi-transparent, some are very opaque. This just gives you options, because I don't like the grid showing through the final painting. And I don't like having to layer on lots and lots of layers to cover it. And so by just knocking it back in some places with the white acrylic at the start, it just leaves my options open. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to start with this small round. And I told you last time about adding a little bit of solvent. So I'm just going to get the brush a little bit wet. But then I'm going to like run it against the paper towel and knock it back a little bit. I don't want the paint too wet, just a tiny bit wet.
Got it.
Now, like that drawing that I showed you, first thing I'm going to do, I'm starting with black, is I'm going to go through my painting and just add black to the darkest spots in in the drawing, you know, based on the reference. What we're going to do, we're going to take it up to like a medium gray-green today, and we'll see if we can get further than that. But as you look at the reference, what you're going to do is evaluate the values. You're going to look at each detail and ask yourself, is it black or almost black? Or mostly black? If it's black or mostly black, paint it black. If it's not, we'll mix a color up from there. So we're going to go from black to dark gray to dark gray, and maybe up to a middle gray. Just kind of, so this is kind of what I meant with working in collapsing zones of interest. To start out with, all I'm looking for is what is the darkest bit. And when I've done that, I'll go through again and I'll be asking myself, what's the next darkest bit? With your watercolors, there's an order of operations that's normal. Mm-hmm. You work from light to dark, right?
Yes. Yes.
Because watercolors are all transparent. Mm-hmm. And so once you go dark, you can't layer up light on top of it. It just turns to mud. Oil paint is the opposite, it's backwards, because so many of them are opaque. We work from dark to light, because we can always layer light colors on top to pull back from being too dark. But it's harder to go in the other direction. And if you overpaint the lines, you go outside the lines, it's not really a problem, so don't stress about it. It's just the beginning, and it can all get fixed. One of the things about oil paintings, you can literally work on a single painting forever. There's no point at which you can't keep making adjustments. In fact, I think it was, I forget if it was Rembrandt or Monet. I think it was Monet. Said something like, any artist who claims to have finished a painting is terribly arrogant. Mm-hmm. They're never finished. You just call them done and move on. And you may notice a lot of the times I've got my pinky touching the canvas. And that's just to steady my hand. I try to avoid ever touching the oil paints with my bare skin, because that's a really, really bad habit. Oh. A lot of the pigments are heavy metals. And because the binder is oil-based, it will soak through your skin and you'll start accumulating heavy metals in your body, which is very, very bad. Mm-hmm. And you could, if you develop that habit over time, one day you start painting and you discover you now have a violent allergy to the oil paints. Mm. And you can't use them anymore, or you have to use them with gloves. And so I try to keep them off my skin at all times, but you just don't develop the habit of getting paint on your skin and you're going to be okay. And I have maul sticks, if it gets to that point. If you're painting on a zone where you can't touch the canvas without getting paint on your skin that you need to study your hand, you can use one of these things.
Oh.
This is called a maul stick. And then you can hit those details with the steady of your hand. Kind of fancy.
That's so smart.
I use a very limited number of colors for most of each painting. Mostly browns, actually. And for greens, it's mostly black plus yellow ochre plus white, because that combination makes it just a very dull greenish color. I've got this principle I work with a lot of people, especially beginning artists, use all the options, right? And lots and lots of vibrant colors, or all vibrant colors. But the rule is, when everything is emphasized, nothing is emphasized. If every detail is equally vibrant, which one do you pay attention to? And so that's why I use a very subdued color palette for most of it. So like I'll use the darkest brown that's reddish, and the burnt sienna is a very reddish brown. And so I'll use those for most of the reds. So when I pull out a crimson or a really saturated red, it now has center stage, like it's got a spotlight on it. Right. Everything is red-ish, or green-ish, or yellow-ish, so that when I go for the vibrant color, it's like, that's what you're meant to be paying attention to. Right?
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, it just gives kind of everything a little bit more room to breathe, to be what it is, in a more non-competitive way. Just helps me control the focus. Some of the black lines that I laid down are gonna get partly knocked back or even obliterated by the next color, or they'll show through very vaguely, and that's okay, because if I decide later it needs to get restated, redarkened, I can do that. It's not a problem. So you want to be careful but not precious about your details. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You want to get it right. It kind of becomes about economy of motion. But don't stress about it. We can always go back and bring it back out. And sometimes the softening that I get from blending the colors is a benefit. So like the nostrils are getting pretty overpainted. But nostrils are not usually black. They're dark, one of the darkest spots, but they're not really black. So starting with black in the nostril and then overpainting it and blurring that actually gets me to the final effect that I want. But like I said last time, some of this, you'll want to spend a good amount of time learning anatomy because some of what I'm doing is filling in blanks. The photograph may not give me all the information I need, but I know my anatomy well enough to know what's where, and I just do it without knowing that I'm doing anything. And so, you know, feel free to ask questions, and if you don't understand anything, or you know why I'm doing this or that.
Thanks.
Yeah, please don't hesitate to ask questions. It's a little bit like coaches versus athletes. Some of the best athletes make terrible coaches.
Because they just do it.
Right, and some of the best coaches were really mediocre athletes. Because there's a difference between being able to do something and articulate how to do it.
Right.
And some of those, you know, the superstar athletes, they just could always do it. They don't know what they're doing or how they're doing it. They just do it. It just made sense to them, and they got paid for doing it. But they can't tell you how they're doing it because they don't know. They're just doing. And so, you know, I don't know how much of what I do has become invisible to me in terms of, well, why did you do that? Or what does that mean? And where'd you get that detail? That's not in the picture. Like, oh, you're right. But I know it's there. It's not, you know, yeah, you know, I've got some paint up on there, and now I'm kind of pushing it around.
Okay.
And
Lightens it a little.
well, yeah, when it gets spread thinner, it lightens up a little bit, but it's also some of it, like here, these marks,
Yeah.
I intend to overpaint with the next lighter color.
Oh, okay.
They'll get a lot subtler and softer. The contrast will be a lot lower when the next color goes on. But I put them there because they will still stand out a little bit. Like when I put some black into there, it's not because that's all the way black, but because I knew when I overpainted it, it would blend and still be a darker line than what was next to it. And so that's kind of what I meant with some of the stuff I do. Is like, oh yeah, I should call that out because that's a thing and I just do it and don't think about it.
Was that taught to you, or is that something you just learned on your own?
Developed over time.
Okay.
Yeah, as I said in the video, where I went to school, they were kind of light on teaching you what to do with things. And,
Oh, okay.
then I had to figure a lot of things out for yourself. And in some ways, maybe that's the best way to learn. In all things, I've learned over time that the hardest won lessons tend to be the stickiest.
Mm-hmm.
They just stay with you.
Right.
Because they were so hard to learn. Some of my technique is because, you know, as I said in the last video, because nobody taught me. I learned some funny habits, maybe even doing it wrong, but it led to...
It works for you.
I've learned how to make it work for me. Yeah, exactly. Part of what I'm doing, which I should call out, because it's really useful. You did it with the hair in Lana Turner.
Mm-hmm.
Pull your brush in topographical directions. So, for example, here on his neck, we've got these large muscles that come down from either side of the neck. So I pull the brush in the direction along those muscles that they follow.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got, in the middle, you've got the esophagus. And so I'll pull the brush around it to follow the shape of that form. And it helps build in. So we're building form, not just with the colors we're putting down, but the direction in which we pull the brush.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a huge efficiency. If we have time, I think we'll try to rough in the hair as well, because the edges of where hair and skin overlap is kind of blurry. You know, because hair is like a forest, and so the edge of the forest, you're going to get a soft edge.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see, like the mustache, I'm overpainting the edge of the mustache and the hair at the sides. That's deliberate because I want those to blur when I, add the hair color, because they just kind of merge into each other. But there is just a lot of push-pull back and forth, creeping up on the final result that you want. And so you don't have to stress, really. So again, you know, topography on the forehead, I'll pull it side to side, the brush in kind of a windshield wiper motion, because the forehead's it's kind of flat but kind of round. It's a kind of keystone shape, and it's got these ridges on either side of the round bit that kind of mark the transition from the roundish, squarish middle bit and turning around to the side of the head. There's a lot of compound curves in the human head. There's hardly any straight lines. There's a couple of fat muscles on either, just above the eyebrows and on either side of the nose that help create some of the shape in the forehead. The muscles we engage for certain facial expressions. So in a way, mapping out the skull and the muscles on top of the skull, now I've got enough on there to kind of start pushing and pulling a little bit. It's like, all right, is that darker than I want it to be or lighter? So I can start adjusting the details a little bit. Discovered over time, though, that I need to stop at around this middle bit, because when I try to add lighter paint, it's not so much laying down lighter paint that sits on top to get these lights. It's more like I'm just scraping off some of the paint I just laid down, and it's canvas showing through. So it may not look like I do very much at this stage. The next rounds of color will be a Naples yellow, which is a very pale buttery yellow, and that's the light gray in this underpainting, and then white. So that'll be next week, and that's why, you know, depending on how you get on, maybe we move on and rough in the hair. Don't be afraid of losing your drawing a little bit at this point. I expect you to, or I expect you shall. But that's one of the reasons we've got the reference photo, because if we obliterate some of the detail in the painting, the photo can guide us in putting it back. Like, I can't see it on the painting anymore, but oh yeah, there it is. It is a thing. It's right there. That's part of the push and pull. It's just part of the process. So. So I just looked at it and thought, you know, those cheeks are getting a little too full and childlike. So I'm reintroducing some dark to redefine the structure of the face a little bit more again. And so it's just that tug of war back and forth, walking in on the final result I'm happy with.
Do you find it easier to do that with the oil paints than with other mediums?
It's much easier with oil paints because they dry so slowly. You have time to go back and forth and make those adjustments. And, you know, like with acrylics, they dry so fast that you have to work faster, or it's harder to work with this kind of method. Like the nose is getting really fuzzy now. I'm losing structure. And that's okay. I'm not going to worry about it too much because I can put it back. It'll be easier to put it back after this stiffens up a bit. And I can come back in with the lighter colors and smaller brushes. I'm starting to feel like I'm getting this to a point where I'm going back and forth but not making progress. So this might be a point where I call it for the day and I just stop working on these details at any rate. How are you feeling? Oh, you are really obsessing over detail.
Sorry.
No, I mean, it's normal. I expected it. So that's not a criticism. It's more like, you're doing exactly what I figured you would do. And that's okay.
It's very different than watercolor.
Mm-hmm. Boy, did that change the structure in a hurry. You know, I mean, it still surprises me how you do this, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and get this massive difference. Yeah, I think I need to stop doing this. I'm feeling pretty good about where it is at the moment as I pick up my brush to make another tweak.
Well, you know you're never done.
Yeah, it's like, if you're an obsessive compulsive, maybe you shouldn't be an artist, or maybe you should be because you're obsessive compulsive. It's just like, it's hard to know where that breaks. I think what I'm going to do now is rough in the hair, and that'll help consolidate some of those edges more rationally. It's a little soft and mushy in places, but I'm okay with it. I feel like it's starting to get dialed in enough to where it's ready to sit and wait for the next stage.
It's looking really good.
So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start roughing in the background. You do understand what I mean when I talk about pulling in topographical directions?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
And so I'm just trying to get these highlights back.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So like with this, with the cheek you would go like this, right? Kind of where.
Yeah, you can do that, but you can also pull.
Alright, now for the nose. My nose at least
That one's
goes
good.
this way. And this nose goes that way.
Right,
And then for these lines, I went down.
Right.
It's just, and then right here it went down.
Okay.
And for these, I was trying to go this way.
Perfect.